Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Fantasy Turf War, the show where 64 teams go head-to-head to see who is the ultimate champion. I am your commissioner and host for tonight, Cory. Lauren is on a much-deserved vacation for her birthday, which is also today, so happy birthday, Lauren, if you're watching. We are joined today by our awesome co-host, as I hit the unmute button here, Matthew Ane. Matthew, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. How about yourself?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm ready for tonight's show. I'm pretty excited. I think we've got our new intro, and I was joking around about the whole DVD bouncing thing that I spent way too long on. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And let's see, Matt, give us a little intro about yourself and Locked On, and what you guys do over there.
So we are a 30-minute fantasy baseball podcast, giving you great in and out information on who to add, drop, trade for, trade away, all that wonderful stuff that you want to get in. And you know, just you can find me at Twitter at Matthew_on or over at Locked On Fantasy Baseball, and obviously here. So we're gonna bring some awesome fantasy football knowledge to you today.
Yeah, it's interesting to see because we haven't compared notes. So we have the rankings, of course, but we haven't compared preferences, and so that'll be interesting to
Mm-hmm.
see how we do with that. But before we get started, we got a couple of quick updates for you. It's a big week for us. We are celebrating our 10th episode, which aired this afternoon, and that was the interview with DJ Don Hall, one of my friends from the Air Force. We talk about his days as in the Air Force when we were together, and then some of the work he's done as a comic book artist since. And it's a great episode. Just aired today, so go check that out. And yeah, we crossed 10 episodes, and this would be episode 11. So we are cruising, and it is getting serious now. I think we're about to hit 60 days till NFL season, and we are moving. We also dropped an interview with the Fantasy Couriers, DJ Dove and JJ Wang on Monday, and those two are hilarious to say the least, and they're a giant breath of fresh air. So go check them out, and give them some love. And I think they're going to be a formidable team. Although I know JJ has some fantasy allegiance issues, but that's in the interview for you to check out. So. Cool. All right. Before we get started, we wanted to do a quick message from our friend over at WW Radio, Lou Mangello, at Momentum Weekend Workshop. Are you ready to turn your ideas into income and passion and profit? Momentum Weekend Workshop is a 3-day event in Walt Disney World, which is Friday through Sunday, September 27 to 29, 2024. That's this year. It's meant for creators and solopreneurs, designed to inspire and equip you with the tools and strategies needed to turn your passion into profitable ventures. It offers a dynamic mix of presentations, workshops, and networking, all aimed at empowering you to build and grow your businesses. With a focus on practical advice, actionable insights, and community support, Momentum is the ideal event if you're looking to launch or elevate your entrepreneurial journey. Head on over to lumangello.com/momentum and start your journey today. And he has a promo code. That promo code is fantasy. And if you type in promo code fantasy, you will save $100. And you'll save $100 on that. And it's a great discount. And just to highlight this opportunity, several people in the league, and we had another edition this afternoon. Also participated in this Momentum Weekend Workshop. It is where this idea came from for Fantasy Turf War. So cannot recommend it highly enough. I've attended multiple times. I'll be going back again this year, again September 27 to 29, 2024. It's an intense weekend. There's tears and laughter and a lot of hard work. And I reflected on it this past week, and I had made a comment that I believe I had used information from and things that I learned from every single panel from that weekend. So cannot recommend it highly enough. So head on over to lumangello.com/momentum and sign up today. And I hope to see you guys there. And if you're going, let us know so we can check you out. All right. So, Matt, we have a lovely topic today, as you could tell from our thumbnail, and we're going to start talking about the cheerleaders of the fantasy football. Or no, I mean the quarterbacks of fantasy football. So, as our stats guy, I'll let you. I'll let you take the lead, and I think we agreed that we'll start from top of the ADP down, and then we'll kind of see how far we get. And I'm curious to see if your rankings match the ADPs and what you would actually prefer to draft, and ultimately where do you pull the trigger at? Where do you draft at, and where do you start the run of quarterbacks? So I'll let you take it from there.
All right. I guess I guess before we even get into the ADP breakdown is what we're going to cover here. I guess I might as well talk about, you know, what my philosophy is on drafting a quarterback. I never like to take the earlier quarterbacks. It's just one of those things where I always find myself lacking in depth at the multi position. So, like for instance, where you have to start more than one wide receiver, more than one running back. Like the onesie positions kind of, end up just clogging up, creating less depth in those positions essentially. So I'm more of a late round kind of guy. I'm aiming for anywhere from like I don't know 9 to about 12 ranked quarterback in my rankings that I want to at least walk away with, and then probably an upside quarterback at the end if need be, depending on how the draft pretty much falls to me and things like that. So ultimately, you won't see me really grab any of the top 6 guys we probably talk about, but it's going to be fun to talk about because they are going to be nice on your team if you do pull the trigger early. Uh, you know, Generally, if you do pull a quarterback earlier, pick a quarterback earlier in the draft, you want to go ahead and not draft a tight end early. You want to go late on that end. So it's just a matter of what your preference is, I guess, who falls to you, who's your guy, and then kind of plan from there. So let's, I guess, get into it, right? And our first guy, based off of ADP, the consensus number one quarterback is Josh Allen. Josh Allen, we all know who he is, right? He's awesome. He had a phenomenal season last year, I might add. He racked up a wonderful and half point six point touchdown. What do you call it? Leagues, right? 450 points, the number one quarterback last year. He played all 17 games. He completed 385 passes out of 579 attempts, completed 66% of those. That's what it created 4,300 yards, 29 passing touchdowns, had a 5% touchdown rate, which is absolutely wonderful. Did throw 18 picks, which is not my favorite statistic of his, but here's how he makes up for it. He runs. He had 111 attempts last year, had 524 rushing yards, averaged about 4.7 rushing yards per carry, and had 15 rushing touchdowns. You cannot beat that. Like, the reason why he's the number one quarterback, even in my rankings, is the 15 rushing touchdowns. Because, you know, sometimes you get really upset when you have your quarterback going, you don't have that team's running back. That oh god, they're just going to hand it off and they're going to get the goal line touch. No, Josh Allen likes to run it in, which then you're going to get that bonus of if he doesn't pass the ball, he's going to run it in, and that's really great. Like he'll run it in constantly. It's wonderful. You hate being the Cook owner because then he loses those opportunities, but it is what it is for that owner. But you drafted Josh Allen, it's a cheat code. And on
Right.
top of that, the 529 rushing yards, that's worth more than the passing yards because that's for every 10 yards, that's a point versus every 25 passing yards. So it's a faster way to equate points. Obviously, he's not going to be a Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts that's going to, run up and have a 100 rushing yard game. But if he walks away with like 30, 40, that's a big difference going up against the Patrick Mahomes of the worlds. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, and I think we're in the era of running quarterbacks, and you're right. If you don't draft a running quarterback, you know that going in. But if you do draft one, it's kind of just good practice not to pick up the running back to go with it because you're almost vulturing yourself out of the points because, like you said, if he gets close, he's either going to throw it or he's going to run it himself. I would say 8 times out of 10 maybe depending on the team, I guess. But yeah, it's interesting. I think Josh Allen is definitely I would say he's a contender for number one. My concern, I think, would be if he's lost a lot of firepower in the offseason. And so I wonder if he still has the same production value going through the year that he had last year. Not to say that the talent's not there. I don't know if the receiving end is equipped to handle the load.
I could see your point. I mean, yes, they drafted Coleman and they lost Diggs and Gabe Davis, and I could see all that. But it's just one of those things where I feel like you look at like Patrick Mahomes, right, who really doesn't have a solid, you know, passing arsenal, right? Like he's been successful without it, still able to put up the points. Josh Allen is the same caliber quarterback in my mind, and I feel like he'll be able to handle it. He has Keon Coleman, who they drafted, and Curtis Samuel, who has a nice track record of, being somewhat of a gadgety guy that can make plays. So I feel like it's maybe not the best combo, but if Keon Coleman can step up and be the guy even after week 6, because it does take a little bit longer for wide receivers, rookie wide receivers to develop,
Yeah, a little bit.
we could see something special out of both of them.
Yeah, do you think Samuel takes the clear number one spot, or who do you think is his go to target then?
So, to be honest, I also forgot to mention Dalton Kincaid, and I feel like him and Kincaid, after having a whole year, could possibly be his one. Kincaid has phenomenal hands, and then you know, yes, Curtis Samuel could be a nice solid too. He kind of reminds me of, and this is showing my age, but like a Percy Harvin kind of guy. Where
Hey,
like
he's not that
you're
old.
yeah, but me though, but Percy Harvin's heyday was wonderful. You get a couple rushing yards, you get a little bit of this, he does it all. So they might be able to do a bunch of little gadget plays that kind of, get him in the backfield, still count as forward passing, and then be able to run up both their stat lines. I'm not trying to really draft Curtis Samuel anywhere, but he might be a quick little, lottery pick towards the end of the draft, at least for me.
Okay, yeah, I think I can agree to that. So not to linger too long on Josh Allen, I think he gets a lot of attention up front from just being most of the mainstream number one picks. Anyway, I would just ask then from your perspective, is he the clear QB1 for you in terms of rankings going to the draft, or do you have someone else in mind?
No, he is my number one. All my argument is ahead of that, from the rushing, the passing. Even if the passing touchdowns take a dip by 5, which is probably a likelihood, I think the rushing touchdowns will probably either stay, or if anything, increase, because he cannot rely on the passing yards, and he'll just become more effective that way.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think I can agree to that. I don't know if I necessarily disagree. I do think one other quarterback, and we'll get into them later, might be competition for number one, but I think it's more of a gamble in that I think they might end up number one and not be number one going into the season. So with that, let's transition into the next one. So is it Jalen Hurts? I think is number two.
Yep. And Jalen Hurts, crazy, because I thought I would be the high guy, but I pretty much match ADP. He is also my number 2. And I can understand why, though. Like, you look at, one, the passing weapons around him, two, how often he runs. And quite honestly, he was held back last year from really running. And his season last year was good, even though it was ugly from a real football standpoint. If you watch the Eagles all last year, it was really ugly to watch. But he had a good fantasy year. you know, 352 completions, 538 attempts, 65% of pass completion, 3,850 yards. What do you call it? 23 passing touchdowns, unfortunately, 15 interceptions. My guy also had 157 rushing attempts, 600 rushing yards, a wonderful 15 touchdowns as well for rushing. All those signs point to everything I like about Josh Allen, and then a little bit more because of his passing weapons. So his receivers are absolutely mind-boggling, right? They're almost as good, in my opinion, as Cincinnati, where you have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Here you have AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, both amazing wide receivers that can catch the ball, put up big numbers, and are super explosive. Specifically, AJ Brown. AJ Brown stays healthy and does what he did 2 years ago. Jalen Hurts is going to have a serious step forward, and kind of more returns to that 2022 form. He's going to run. Hopefully, they're not fighting with the offensive coordinator and the head coach, and making him just have to throw the ball deep every time, because that's what he likes to do. Rein him in on those sides, but then also allow him to be creative, create more running opportunities, which will then open up those deep passes that he likes to do. So I think Jalen Hurts this year is going to take a serious step forward, and the offensive line may have lost Kelsey and may have gotten a little bit of a downgrade, but I still think is going to be successful because of the anticipation of, will he run when he will run.
Yeah, and I think I agree with all that as well. I'm not a big Eagles guy. I just never really been a fan, but Jalen Hurts was always fun to watch, and I felt like last year he was kind of held back, and I kind of wish they just let him go and do his thing. That comes with time, and I think that that might be this year where they just say, "You have the reins, take the league, go for it, go do what you want to do," with some little nod, push and nod here and there. But yeah, I think he's definitely I think to me he's still a clear number two in terms of the quarterback rankings, but I do like him going into the season, and like I said, he's always enjoyable to watch. So I look forward to seeing where he ends up in this year. Um, It is worth maybe taking a pause after. We'll do it after the next one because I know the next one's a big one too. But
Hmm.
yeah, I wanted to see like where do you personally draw the line in terms of drafting a quarterback and when to pull the trigger. But I'll let you mull that over as we transition over to the quarterback three with a clear ADP of number three, and that is Mr. Patrick Mahomes.
Yep. Mahomes is another great one. You know, we all are in love with him in terms of like, what his upside is. He's been probably the quarterback one, what, 5 out of the 8 years he's been in the league, and with good reason. He's just been great. He's had great offensive weapons, and I think that this actual ranking an ADP of him is actually a little too high. I have him as the number 4, and I'm still, like, kinda hesitant, but at the same time, you gotta kinda bet on the talent and, get last year out of your head, even with the aging Travis Kelce and the Taylor Swift drama. I hate that she's mentioned on every show that I
Let's see
do.
where
Oh,
how
yeah.
far did we get? We got 8 minutes. We got 8 minutes in. No, just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. And, just the lack there of weapons, like, okay, you have Rice who's dealing with legal issues. You have the new guy coming in, Worthy, who I'm like really not a fan of. Truthfully, he's just a speedy guy. I think they're trying to like with Sky Moore and every other wide receiver they draft, they're trying to replace Tyreek Hill. I don't think that you should go out and do that as a team standpoint. But two, and there's only one Tyreek Hill, and there's only ever going to be one Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
You missed it. So like it's just not going to happen. Stop doing it. And I think Worthy's going to be another Sky Moore versus being, you know, uh, Tyreek Hill. End of the
Yeah.
day is
It,
yeah, go ahead.
it's like the Mean Girls, right? Like, stop trying to make Tyreek Hill happen. Yeah, I
Mhm.
think I think that's a fair point. I'm man, I'm kind of glad Lauren's not here today because this is kind of a hot take on the Chiefs. I don't know if it's just being a Raiders fan or maybe the Taylor Swift stuff, but I'm always usually down on the Chiefs. I'm not a big fan of them at all. I think, yeah, I think Patrick Mahomes is probably ranked a little bit higher than I'd prefer it to be. Again, not because of talent. I just think that the support team around him is aged out and traded out, and I just think that the other teams in the league that are probably better, and I would not rooting against the Chiefs because that's just mean, but like I would think that the other teams kind of come into their own and give them some challenges this year. But yeah, Patrick Mahomes is probably down to five on my list. Yeah, I think that's about where I'd put him. But yeah, stop trying to make Tyreek Hill happen.
Yeah, and but you know what's kinda scary about last year, why I still have him at 4 and why I'm willing to draft him, and he's like the last of the tier for me, is last year he had 68% of his finishes was as a top 12 quarterback and 40% as a top 6. Now
Yeah.
that's hard to come by, right? Guys that are, like, going after like, that you would draft higher, like Lamar Jackson, how consistent do you think he was in the as a top 6 quarterback?
Having had some stock in him, not very.
Yeah. So that was 27.5% of the time. Top 12, over 50, but as a top 6 quarterback, which would be return on the draft price, really didn't fare well. So
Yeah.
whereas Patrick Mahomes, who you did pick higher, still has that consistency of being able to get up there and perform as a top 6 quarterback, and we worth that higher pick. So that's why he's still in my top 4.
Yeah.
But, the upside and the ceiling, I feel, is not as high because, 1, the weapons, 2, he doesn't have that rushing floor either like the other 2 and like the other guy that we're probably gonna talk about very soon. So, yeah.
Yeah, and not to beat the dead horse. Yeah, just I think when Mahomes came into the league, he was this brand new idea of what a quarterback would be, and that he was so versatile, and I think he's ambidextrous, or he just whipped the damn thing out there. So it's like it was just such a shock to the league that I think they finally started to catch on and started to play defense around that, especially as younger defenses come into the league, and obviously they saw that kind of offense in college, so it's aged into there, but and it happens, right? Because quarterbacks, as they get older, they tend to do worse unless you're Tom Brady and just become a robot after some amount of years. But yeah, it's probably a combination of the defenses are getting better at defending against Mahomes, the talent pool, the weapons, and he's just getting a little bit older. Not to say that he doesn't have the talent, and clearly he's got the track record to go with it. So no disrespect to him there, but yeah, I think there are other quarterbacks that I would probably put ahead of him, Josh Allen and Hurts included, and that it's probably a good way to segue into our next quarterback. Who do we got next?
It's actually Lamar Jackson. He's being drafted number 4 overall and pick 38 overall. And that's a little wild for me. These quarterbacks are going, because I haven't been saying their actual picks. So Josh Allen, let me just review it real quick. 16 pick overall, 25 for Hurts, 30 for Patrick Mahomes, and now 38th for Lamar Jackson. This is where they're being drafted, overall in terms of, going down the snake draft. But
Where
anyway,
I'm sorry, where was Hertz again?
Hurts was 25th.
Okay, so that's mid second round, and then
Yeah.
you're saying Josh Allen's going at the end of the first round, which there could
Yep.
be an argument there on a 16 team league. You're trying to get some top tier talent, knowing that you're going to get the back to backs. So I could see that. Um, that's surprising with Mahomes down to 38. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I could kind of see it though, only because of, again, the talent that's around him, but also too just, how much longer are they going to be caring about the season? They're going to care about the second half and the playoffs, and that's where Kelsey really breaks out. So
Yep.
Mahomes' stats may just not be as, wonderful as they are. And he's kind of more of like um, um, a lower end fantasy quarterback, but a fantastic NFL quarterback. So that's where they got to draw the line. We got to realize they play a real game and they go after real money versus,
Yeah.
us playing fantasy football.
You mean they don't value a fantasy championship for my hypothetical team over their Super Bowl rings and glory and fame for eternity?
Yeah, they're so rude that way.
Yeah,
Let me tell you. Jeez.
inconsiderate.
Yeah, but let's talk about Lamar Jackson now. Lamar Jackson, funny enough, you would have thought with the year he had, he would have finished higher, and he didn't. He finished as the quarterback 5 last year with 300. Sorry, with 379 points. He had about 23.7 points a game, which is actually really nice. He completed 307 passes versus to a 457 attempts, which is actually really nice, and had a completion rate of 67%. 3,678 passing yards, wonderful. And he had 24 touchdowns with only 7 interceptions. Pretty efficient in that route. But here's the wonderful part: 148 rushing attempts, 821 rushing yards. And this is the surprising stat: only 5 rushing touchdowns. He was actually able to get the job done more through the air last year, which is kind of wild. I feel like the addition to Derrick Henry will kind of open up a little bit more space for Lamar Jackson and hurt Henry more than it'll hurt Jackson,
Yep.
because now they'll be able to do, like, which they did not have a running back honestly last year. Yes, Gus Edward had a little bit of a stint of being relevant, but now they could do a little play action and kind of get him to kind of run off and do his own thing.
Yep.
It's going to be a bigger threat, so they're going to have to be aware that he actually has a running back behind him, which
Yeah.
also he could dump off to. There's going to be a lot more things going on. Hopefully, Flowers could take a step forward and help him increase, the passing yards. Mark Andrews comes back healthy and fully a go. He should be playing opening day, but we'll see. And you know, Rashard Bateman, he's a afterthought. I don't think he's going to be anything worth of value or damn. So don't worry about him. But the team itself has a lot of options that can just be good for Lamar Jackson, and then he creates his own opportunities. The fact that he had 824 yards last year is absolutely beautiful. It's a cheat code. That's why I draft him. He's my favorite of the bunch because he costs the least, and he generally will live up to the upside of that. And even if he has a positive regression by like 3 or 4 touchdowns in the rushing category or passing, which both can happen and at the same time too, he is then better than Jalen Hurts on the stat on the for fantasy lines. So the upside and the ceiling play is there, and he doesn't cost you as much as the other guys that can probably have the same production as him, but a couple picks later.
Yeah, so Lamar Jackson and I have a love hate relationship, and I've had quite a bit of stock in him over the last few years, and I think it's the idea of Lamar Jackson that I'm always like more attracted to than necessarily production value. Not that I'm ever really disappointed in having Lamar Jackson because, like you said, he's consistent. No matter what, you can guarantee he's going to put up points one way or the other, and I definitely agree that their offense has a lot more options this year and should be the opportunity is going to be there for them to put something together. So it's kind of on them to make sure that works. I do think, the running back situation in Baltimore was worse the last few years just because, you had Gus Edwards and then before he was kind of this plagued by injury and you never know who's going to be the guy. And I think ultimately that just gave them that inconsistency. But I think if Lamar Jackson's going to have that breakout, not necessarily breakout because he's had great years, but if he's going to make that rise to a number one, number two ranked kind of thing by the end of the year, this is going to be the year because I think he's got way more opportunity than he's had before. So for all the years, I'm like, oh, I'm going to do Lamar Jackson again. It's like I actually feel kind of good if I have to draft him this year. So I'm not bad with it. And then, like you said, if you're picking him, you're probably doing it at he's not going to be your first overall pick. He's probably your second. So it's like you're not giving up top tier status draft pick just to be able to put him on the team, and you get consistency for it. So I think it's a good value there. And that's really what fantasy football is. It's right. It's that return to value and the volume. And Lamar Jackson has got all of that with the talent to boot. So I think he's good, and I'm probably going to eat those words, like 6 weeks into this, and be like, "Ah, oh, I did it again." So, but yeah, I like Lamar Jackson, and I never really root for the Baltimore, and I kind of am this year. So it's interesting.
Yeah. No, and all your points are great too. I mean, in a 16-man league, it might be, especially for our format, it's going to be a pick that you might consider just because of that. And depth may not be something that everybody has anyway, but at least you have maybe an edge in that position, the onesie position, because that also could be an edge in those regards, especially with a high upside, high ceiling play. So
Yeah,
I 100% appreciate that thought process. But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's always interesting, and maybe we'll cover that. Once we kind of cap out the top tier quarterbacks, is like what is that decision process when it comes to picking early, picking late, picking at all? I mean, definitely pick somebody, but yeah, it's always an interesting process because for as much planning as you do, some I'm not going to say the word goes in and just picks a quarterback like second pick overall, and you're like, you just screwed up everything. So
I love those guys because that means there's depth at other positions. Like, thank you for sucking. I'm
yeah,
gonna be good, and I'm gonna have depth, and I can stream a quarterback every week. It's fine. I'll do it.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
Yeah, and it's a good exercise last year when you have to do that because Aaron Rodgers went out in the first game, and now you have no choice but to stream somebody every week. So, yeah, that's always
Oh,
an interesting.
it destroyed me in best ball last year. I had him everywhere that way.
Oof.
Ugh.
All right, who we got
But
next?
we have CJ Stroud. And I don't know if you're a Stroud guy. I am, but not as the fifth quarterback overall. That is ridiculously high.
Yeah, I was going to
Are
ask
you
where
in?
I was going to ask where you got your rankings from because in most of the ones that I've seen or I pull from all different resources, especially when you're doing your mock drafts. I've never seen them that high. I've seen him maybe as high as seventh, but putting him fifth, maybe there's some biases at play that we don't know about, or it's a typo, or I don't know. But
So this is Fantasy Pros ADP. So this
oh,
is a culmination of ESPN, Yahoo, CBS, and NFBC.
so you know
So
who we can blame for that then is DJ Dove because in his interview he dropped on Monday, he shared right at the end. If you stick with it, you get a little snippet that he's a Fantasy Pros contributor for his rankings, and so we'll just blame this on him. And yeah, that's his fault. So yeah, all right, cool. Now we know where it happened. So
yeah. So I mean, if he's doing mock drafts right now, he's definitely raising the cost. And I think picking CJ Stroud this early is absolutely like mind blowing. He's a pocket passer. Now, pocket passes are great, but for them to be like super efficient and return on value for the draft price that you're going to spend, they have to throw 30 to 35 touchdowns and not kill you in fumbles or interceptions and be hyper efficient in order to really pay back. Like the way these guys at the top make up for this is high rushing yards and rushing touchdowns because they make up for the ones they don't throw they got with their legs. CJ Stroud last year, yes, he was a rookie and had a really nice touchdown number for a rookie, 23. He also threw 499 attempts last year, was fantastic in all regards. It was great with 4,100 yards. But are you really going to want to waste that high of a pick? Think about it. You're going to have a choice between in the third round, essentially, is where we're going in 12-man leagues,
yep,
where, you know, a difference between a number two wide receiver that you're going to need multiple of, or a quarterback, which is a onesie position. You could find a guy that is going to make similar stats to him. Yes, is there quarterback number one season in him? Yeah, I don't think his sophomore year. I think like year 3, I don't think Diggs increases that. I think if anything, Diggs hurts that team because of his mentality and his craziness. Tank Dell is going to be fantastic there. And, you know, I just the it's going to be a weird dynamic there with him, and I just don't think he's going to be as valuable as all these other quarterbacks essentially.
Yeah, I saw he's at overall pick 45, and in a 16 team league, you're saying that's your third overall pick. Especially in a 16 team league like Fantasy Turf War, I cannot justify that price. I unless there's a run on quarterbacks, I would be looking elsewhere because if he's the top choice and it's the third pick overall, someone else has probably sacrificed something, and you should be capitalizing on their mistake. And I would not be going that high again. Not to knock on the talent and all that stuff. It's all there. I just think that's way too high, especially in a 16 team league, because I think I'd be stacking running backs and receivers because they're such a premium. And I could not justify that to myself to go that high for CJ Stroud at 45. Now our next pick, I kind of alluded to it in all the prep work we did all this week, but I think the next pick or the next uh, quarterback we're going to talk about, I could probably justify that, but again, it's probably more of the hope than the credentials. So with that, we got Anthony Richardson out of Indy, and what do we got on him?
Well, I like the thought process that he possibly could be a top 5 quarterback. There's obviously a ceiling play for him. Anthony Richardson has all the upside in the world. Him and the Colts have weapons too. I mean, you look at Michael Pittman and Jonathan Taylor. Those are guys that are going to, be able to not only pass to, but also Jonathan Taylor is going to open up space for him to run as well. It's going to be wonderful offense to watch as long as Anthony Richardson doesn't RG3 and go ahead and get himself hurt. Anthony Richardson did it last year. He got hurt, unfortunately. Now, these things happen. It's football. Guys get hurt. But Anthony Richardson is probably the most riskiest player you could draft, but also has the highest ceiling, hands down. I love the kid's talent. I think he could rush for 1,000 yards and have 3,000 and change passing yards and have 20 to 23, passing touchdowns along with 10 to 12 rushing touchdowns. And that's a fantastic season from him. That's a QB1. But is it this year? Do you think with his first true season? I don't think so. You know, I, they have all. They're just not going to do it for me. I don't think their
Okay.
offensive line right now too. It's just to throw it out there. They are. I'm pulling it up because I have the ranking here. Uh, Sorry about this. The Colts are 5, which is great, but they all have to come together, and he has to stay healthy in order to do so.
Yeah, I think for me, again, I don't know what about it, but I seem to be all in on Richardson this year, and I think a lot of it for me is over year perspective, and so like I was kind of alluding to with Patrick Mahomes, he's got he was a shock to the league when he came into it, and now that he's been around for a few years, I think the defense have kind of gotten wiser to him. They've gotten used to his style, and yeah, not sure if age is it's like a right in the middle thing, right? Because you don't want them to be old to where they've been used to in the league, and then young to where they're inexperienced. And I think Richardson might have gotten enough experience before he got injured to where he's going to be effective and damaging to defenses. But then they haven't gotten enough time to get used to him to get smart enough to play against him. And I think he's got, like I said, the ceiling's high, and it's one of those. From a fantasy perspective, I'm wondering if because you're not paying a premium for him, and I wouldn't necessarily pay a premium for him. You've got a high chance of a giant return on your investment in your pick, and he could win you your league. Like we were saying with Lamar Jackson, he's got a lot of consistency there, and you don't want to bank on Lamar Jackson having some sort of breakout year because I don't know if that's going to happen with him. But with Richardson, the breakout opportunity is there, and it's really how much do you want to risk your league on, I would say he's probably like right at the end of the upper tier and the beginning of the middle tier of quarterbacks, to where if I pay a premium, I'm guessing he's going to go off. If I sit on him, it's because I think he's going to be an even better value in another round. But if it came down to Richardson or Stroud, I'm taking Richardson all day. When it now where do I think he lands all year? Um, I think he could possibly land. I would have said number one, but then I was listening to it more and more, and I think he could probably land at a solid two or three. I think he's going to land ahead of Mahomes, definitely ahead of Stroud, unless we're just way off. But you never really know. Yeah, I don't. I think it's interesting, right? And it's always reactive. You have to play your leagues, and your drafts are reactive in a sense that you plan. But I would pick Richardson up if he came across my line.
Yeah, I hear your points, and they're all solid. It's just it's a very risky pick. I mean, pick 48 overall is a high investment. You're still talking a top 50 player, and for a guy that hasn't really done it, we're already kind of giving him the crown, and I just don't want to do that yet.
Yeah.
If he's going where my rankings are and where my rankings have him, I ain't getting him in a single league. I have him as 9, and it's just because he hasn't done it and
Okay.
because of the risk. You know, the thing is we need everybody to step up, including himself, for a guy that played 6 games last year. I need to see him do it for a full season before I'm willing to, spend and justify a number 6 overall quarterback and, say, okay, cool, this is what I'm going to pass on. I'm going to pass on an elite wide receiver or running back at this point for a quarterback that may or may not do it.
Well, in a 16 team league, though, once you get to pick 40, you're getting like right around the 50 mark. I would say that the top tier running backs and receivers are probably gone by now, and so you're weighing out a wide receiver two, maybe a running back two,
Yeah.
against who's going to be your QB one, and so I guess it just depends on who else is out there at the time. Yeah, I think even ninth is it could go either way, right? He could have a killer year and he ends up number two. He could have a subpar year at number nine, and that's the risk you run, right? Like, and with Lamar Jackson, again, going back to that consistency, the volume's going to be there. There's less of a risk, so you can justify the price. And I agree that they're kind of giving him the crown before he's earned it, and it's just do you think it's going to happen? And if you do, it's a risk. Are you willing to accept that or not? And yeah, it's good points. So I like it. All right, who we got next?
All right. We have Mr. Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow, fantastic. I like Joe Burrow. He's still a little too rich for my blood at pick 58. Again, you could clearly tell I am a late round quarterback guy. The number 7/8, he's tied. These next two guys, including Joe Burrow, and then addition to Joe Burrow, are all going around ADP wise at pick 8, 8 number quarterback off the board. And he's out of this group, probably the one I'm going to draft the most, but I wouldn't still draft any of these guys because they're still too high for me.
Yeah.
You know, I love Joe Burrow. What he did in 2022, fantastic season. He had Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. He has electric weapons, and he had Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd is no longer there. So I just look at him and I say, okay, this is going to be the year he steps forward. He's the one I'd probably place a bet on that would be the pocket quarterback that I'd probably take a bet on if I was taking a bet on an early round quarterback because he has all the natural talent in the world. He has been successful in the past. He has shown that he could throw 4,600 yards and throw nearly 30 touchdowns. And he has the weapons that are super elite, probably the best tandem of wide receivers out there, except for maybe Miami. So, you know, there is a lot of stuff riding on there. And quite honestly, I just think that they're going to be that good. Like, they're going to make a serious resurgence. It's going to be just like the Jets, where you saw them lose Aaron Rodgers and the whole team fell apart. That is going to be the key to their success. The only thing I really have knocking them is I believe their offensive line. I'm checking that right now. Yeah, they have like a 16th ranked offensive line. They improved it because they saw what happened to this kid, but I still think that there's still work to do there, but he's still going to be a very successful quarterback.
Yeah, I like Joe Burrow. Seems like an amazing athlete, and I wish he has that not that he hasn't, but I wish he has that clear number one kind of year. And I think that the Cincinnati is definitely one of those offenses you should be very wary of if you're playing against, especially as a defense going against them in fantasy. I just think the options are plentiful, and I think Joe Burrow has the stuff there, and we're starting to get into that territory. I think you and I both kind of might have the same kind of draft strategy of like I'm willing to sacrifice the quarterback one for the volume of wide receivers and running backs, mainly running backs. So like we're getting into that tier where this is usually where I start to take a look at where the quarterbacks land, and if I can get Joe Burrow um, a little bit south of 60, but I think his draft pick is or his overall is 58. So I think that's about right. And if I can get him at about 60, I think I'm in good shape there. Just depends on the strength of running backs and receivers I've gotten up until that point. So I think he's right at that sweet zone of return to value and actual talent and volume that he's going to put up, and I think he's good. So I think we're getting to that tier that I actually like to play at. So
Yeah, buddy. I I agree in those all those regards. Do you want to move on to this next guy?
yeah, who we got?
We
Oh,
got
Packers.
Yeah, Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers. Pick number 61 off the board overall, and I, I like Jordan Love. I think he's going to be a successful quarterback. He had a fantastic year last year. He put up quite a lot of points too. 383 fantasy points last year with 6-point touchdown leagues. He averaged about 22.5 points per game, which is fantastic. Completed 64% of his passes. 4,159 yards in passing, had 32 touchdowns and only 11 interceptions, had 4 rushing touchdowns and 247 rushing yards. That's a nice stat line. That's
Yeah.
exactly what you're hoping for when you're talking about drafting a pocket quarterback.
Yep.
You know, is this repeatable though? That's the question, right? Can he do this again? The weapons around him are pretty good, but can he do it again? That's a big season for a pocket quarterback.
It is, yeah, and I think when it comes to my perspective on quarterback receivers over the years, quarterback receivers, Green Bay quarterbacks over the years, I'm always I'm conscious that I have a heavy bias coming from Chicago, in that I respected the talent of Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, but I never gave them fantasy relevance at all in my mind. And I feel like I'm doing that with Jordan Love right now. Is that he should be looked at and given that consideration. And I don't know if it's the Chicago in me that can't justify it, but I usually just kind of keep moving from Green Bay quarterbacks. But he's definitely got the talent there. I don't know if it's a repeat success. When you're looking at this bunch, you're looking at Joe Burrow, you're looking at him, you're looking at Kyler Murray. When I'm looking at the bunch and I have to pick, like from my end, I'm probably going with something else. I don't know if I'd go with Jordan Love, but I do think he's got the talent to pull it off if you're able to get him. I don't think you'd be upset with that decision.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, you're banking on him having another ceiling year, right? And I think a more realistic year would be like 27 to 26 touchdowns, even though he has a decent wide receiver core. But if one of those go down, the odds go down instantly. And it's just like, okay, you're going to draft him essentially at his ceiling. Well, I guess it's not really a ceiling play with the price, but you're going to again waste depth on this for a quarterback that's a pocket passer that 5 less passing touchdowns and the season's a bust for him.
Yep,
So I just you're really truly just banging on him repeating this amazing season that I don't think he's going to come near. Not that he's going to have a bad season, but he's just not going to be hyper efficient like he was last year.
I agree. Yeah, and especially when we're talking the 16 team divisions, 16 team leagues are tough, and it really is a volume game on the receiver and running back end. And so, do I want to pay a price for a quarterback in the 60s? When I'm looking at Jordan Love, I'd probably say no. If I had to look at Joe Burrow or say Kyler Murray or Dak Prescott, I'd probably be more inclined to say yes to them than I would Jordan Love. But yeah, it's hard to justify him at that price, but I think he has the potential for sure. I just don't think he's going to get there this year.
Yeah. So, I mean, with that, I guess let's move into this next guy, quarterback number 9 off the board. or 8, depending on ADP, who you choose to pick first, and that's Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. You know, he had a nice year last year. It seems like you want to hop in first. Go for it.
I was gonna say this. So of the last three quarterbacks we talked about, they were all tied for eight in terms of ADP. So this rankings has them all in relatively the same consideration point. So when you're looking at the three of them, weigh them equally, more or less.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just really a matter of like if this is where you want to pull your trigger, you want to see okay, who has the most probability to hit their ceiling, right? And what does that ceiling look like for them? And who's going to be the most effective to score you points week in and week out? And personally, if I had to pick out of the three, it is definitely Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott runs. Dak Prescott has a great receiver in front of him. That whereas the other two, I mean, granted, you look at you know who Joe Burrow has. He has great wide receivers, but at the same time, doesn't run as much as Dak, even though Dak only had 242 rushing yards last year. But still, it could make a difference. And that dude could run if he chooses to. You know, he did put up the second most points in fantasy football last year with 414, and he completed 69% of his passes last year. He had 4,500 yards and had 36 passing touchdowns. Now, that's more of a ceiling play. But one thing I will say is he's super efficient. He doesn't really like to throw picks. He had 9 last year, which is awesome. And that's pretty much something you could expect out of him. So even if he has a regression of like 5 passing touchdowns, and he adds 1 rushing touchdown, he still could possibly finish as a top 5, top 7, uh, quarterback. And that's where you're just like, I really like that. Now, the only thing that really has him down in my rankings, because I also have him a little bit lower, I think I have him as my quarterback 7, is his consistency. 53.3% of the time, my guy is a top 12 quarterback. But here's the kicker: 33.3% of the time, he's a top 6 quarterback. And that's where you're just like, how likelihood are you going to be able to blow up and be that guy for me? If it's only 33% of the time, yes, the draft price is kind of right. But at the same time, I kind of just want to be like this. I will wait. And if he falls even a little bit lower, then I might take him if he's around later. But right now, this is still too rich for my blood, especially with an offense that I don't truly believe in.
Yeah, I agree on that. And I've had a lot of stock in Prescott over the years, and I don't think I'm willing to take that chance again. Like you said, he could probably be as high as top 7, but if you're saying a 33% chance to be top 6, I don't think I'd take it. Especially when we start talking about our next quarterback. If I'm taking shots, it's probably going to be on our next guy, Kyler Murray out of Arizona. I'm big on him this year, I think. So, yeah. Yeah, and you're right. Is it the right price? Yes. I don't think there's enough upside for me to say yes to Prescott for another year.
Yeah, I agreed. And I mean, it's all a matter of that. And I actually, so it's funny, right? Last week we talked about Kyler Murray, and I was kind of like poo pooing all over him. And I got to take that back. I did a little bit of a deeper dive, and I actually found myself pumping him up and up and up my draft board. And he's now my number 7 quarterback, funny enough,
Okay.
even though he's going off the board at a nice price at quarterback 10 in ADP and pick 68 overall. Now, that's a great price for him.
Yeah.
And I think that might rise as we see him kind of, be healthy in training camp. And, once, Marvin Harrison Jr. starts getting out there and you start seeing the highlight reels, he's going to get a bump. He might go to like quarterback 7. And I think that's really where he belongs. And he's going to be good. He has upside to run. He can run. He could probably rush for 700, 800 rushing yards. He could totally have, you know, 5 to 6 rushing touchdowns. And then he has one of the best weapons in football, at least that we're going to try and give the crown to. He's another one that I'm not going to expect you have instant impact, kind of more of the Jamar Chase aspect. So it's going to take a little time for him to get going. But I think Kyler Murray can pass the ball around and spread it equally and just be successful as a quarterback in general. He doesn't need the true blue, wide receiver. He had, Hollywood Brown last year and was able to make do. I'm sure he's going to be able to make do with his supporting cast. Kyler Murray is going to be fantastic this year.
Yeah, I'm kind of all in on Kyler Murray. I know I'm not playing this year in Fantasy Turf War, but I imagine in a 16 team, assuming I'm somewhere in the middle of the pack, I would be trying to get a top tier running back, a top tier receiver, and then I would be hoping Kyler Murray's still coming around in the second, third pick. at least a third pick. If he comes across and it's my third pick overall, I'm probably taking it. If not the fourth pick, if I can get a fourth pick, that'd be great. But it really just depends. It'll be interesting to see, right? Because with the amount of experience we have spanning across the league, and we don't know who the divisions are yet, so we don't know like how stacked it is in each division. Um, you'd like to think that people are going to kind of go relatively close to what ADP is, but you never know. One of the inexperienced folks or whoever could just decide, I need to, it's not going well for me so far. I need to switch it up. I'm going to pull the trigger on quarterbacks, and then all of this kind of goes out the window, and you start playing, a little differently. So it's always interesting to see. But if I get, my priorities, I'm going for running back. I usually go receiver after that, and then once I get to that point, depending on how the draft is going, I'm either looking at a quarterback or a tight end, depending on who's out there, what's available, and if there's quite a bit of talent at tight end now, so it's a little bit easier to wait than it used to be. A few years ago, it's like if you don't get one of the top two, you might as well just wait till the end. But now it's kind of a much bigger field to play from, so it's just one of those things you got to play by ear. But know that if Kyler Murray shows up, midway through your draft or third way through your draft, and he's out there, I would pick him up before I'd pick up Jordan Love, and I would put him ahead of Prescott. I don't know if I'd put him ahead of Burrow or any of the top tier quarterbacks we talked about. But I also don't know if you'd have that option when it gets there. So it's just one of those things.
Yeah, fair enough. And, I'm all about it. I just wish the price was just a little bit lower, but I guess quarterbacks are getting pushed up even more and more every year.
Yeah,
So this is go ahead.
I say, and the concern is the health, right? Because he was obviously injured last year. So just like Richardson, it's you're making a guess based on his health status and if he's able to maintain that throughout the year. If he does, I think you're in a good spot, especially if you can get him a little bit cheaper. And then if he busts and he breaks his leg or something like that, hopefully no one does. But then it's a big bust all around. So
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, though, the difference, I guess, between Kyler Murray and Anthony Richardson is about 19 picks. So you'll
yeah,
have at least 2 picks under your belt and have a little bit more depth at other places. Whereas, like streaming a quarterback later at that point will be a little bit easier to support versus losing out on that wide receiver or running back that you might have gotten with the Anthony Richardson pick.
cool. Yeah, so that rounds out our top 10 of quarterbacks. So I know we're running a little bit long on time. We got to cover some stuff in the league itself. Is there anybody else, say from 11 to 20, you think's worth mentioning before we wrap it up?
I mean, I'll throw this out there. Brock Purdy is probably your safest option, and he's going at ADP pick 11 because he's a system quarterback and the weapons around him. And I will throw this out there as well. I like Jaden Daniels as a sneaky lottery pick that if you pick a riskier quarterback, you might want to walk away with Daniels in most drafts because he might have potential to have some serious upside with those weapons around him.
Okay, yeah, I think I can get on board with Purdy. I'm not sure with look, Washington's one of those teams that's just been brutal for years, and you hope that maybe sometime they can break out of that. So I'm not sure I buy off on that one, but I can get on board with Purdy and be okay with it. I'd be pretty okay with it. So there's the dad jokes. That tells you it's time to wrap up quarterbacks. So all right, with that, let's transition into the Fantasy Turf War news. Got a few updates this week, but before we do that, we have a couple of news points to cover from our good friends over at FullTime Fantasy. And so
got their nice shiny graphic up there. And
all right.
We wanted to give them a big shout out with what they're doing over at FullTime Fantasy and Fantasy Football World Championships. They are hosting our platform for Fantasy Turf War this year over at FullTimeFantasy.com. Dive into a world where fantasy football skills meet unparalleled rewards. Whether you're a rookie or a seasoned pro, full-time Tourneys are tailored to challenge, excite, and reward. With league-specific prizes and grand rewards that match your expertise, there's a throne for every champion. Draft from the comfort of your own home, or, even better, draft at Circa Stadium Swim in Las Vegas. The most amazing draft location on the planet. Don't just say you're good at fantasy football, prove it. Head on over to fantasyturf4.com/contests and sign up today. Signing up greatly helps our channel. It supports us and allows us to do what we do. And your support is greatly appreciated. And they are also able to share their their tagline. So fantasy sports have never looked this good, and it's a lovely graphic for them. Their live draft parties in Las Vegas are definitely worth checking out, and looks like they have some killer tournaments in there. So give them a check out at fantasyturf4.com/contests and sign up today.
All right. Now, back to Fantasy Turf War news. So just a couple quick updates. I know that there's been a lot of updates on the interviews throughout the week. So we are pushing out interviews about once a day, 2 p.m. Eastern every day, at least for like the next 3 weeks, it looks like. So we are good there. And right now we are currently out of 64 teams. We have 51 fully registered teams, and we have 4 completely wide open spots. And so the rest of them are in some sort of committed coordination point where we're working through the logistics of getting them signed on or getting their legal PR teams to sign off. So we're working through them, but there are 4 completely open spots. So if you know somebody, tag them in, send them over my way, and we'll get them signed up immediately. We want to lock in the 64 teams before the end of the month so we can get our division and draft order and draft method shenanigans underway. And we can't do that until we get all 64 teams. So we are looking to fill them out. And let's see what else we got. Oh, I forgot to mention. So FullTime Fantasy also owns a fantasy football magazine called Pro Forecast Fantasy Football. They are celebrating their 35th anniversary. I happen to have a copy right here. Yep, and there. And then if you go to the second to last page, we were actually featured in Must Follow on X Profiles. So this is available at Walmart, Target, Barnes & Noble, most of your gas stations, things like that. So go pick one up today. Pretty cool, and we're honored to be able to be included in that magazine. We went to Barnes & Noble the day that they said it published on July 2nd, and we found them. And I was like, I need to buy a couple for the memory books, and it's pretty cool. I've never been in a magazine before, so there's that. So go check that out. They are available, again, pretty much everywhere you can think of. Some stores haven't gotten it yet, but Barnes & Noble's definitely had them. But, check them out. Let's see. We also have 3 more interviews coming this week. We have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern. I believe we have Lauren Hill, our host, whose birthday is again today. We have Cardiacs, the sports and memorabilia store, and we also have Jeffrey Demers over at I forget his name, Downfield Read. There you go, that's the name of the team. And those are all great interviews. I haven't had one yet that I haven't enjoyed. There's some that are just flat out hilarious, and excited to get more and more of the league into the YouTube atmosphere and get you guys to meet them all, because they're all a great bunch, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So we're going to crank through those through the rest of the month. We might actually double up on interviews depending on how quickly we can get them churning out. And we'll start getting down there. But Matt, it's been awesome. It's another killer week. I think it's probably our best episode yet.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it was great. And you want to add anything before we go, or you want to shout anything out?
I just want to say thanks for having me. Looking forward to the league. This is going to be an awesome thing. And guys, keep coming back each week. We're going to keep giving you the best fantasy football knowledge you humanly can say. I was about to say baseball. I'm so used to it. I got to get into football terms, but going to be hit you with this every single week. And Cory, you have such a great product. I am so happy to be here.
Yeah, it's fun. And look, it's a team effort all the way around. You are definitely the right man for the job when it comes to the statistics. I love picking my lineups every week, but I don't have the bandwidth to deep dive, and that is definitely your forte. And I'm so glad to have you on board, and Lauren too. She's not here, but her too. And we're coming into our own, and we're working through the growing pains, and it's starting to turn into a really cool thing. And every week is becoming more and more fun. So, I find myself, in the editing room of the interviews and just cracking up at some of the jokes and some of the outtakes, which I'm putting together too. And some of these things are just hilarious. Lots of cursing and non-YouTube friendly jokes, but the good interviews all the way around. And this is gonna be a blast. So if you want to be a part of it, there's still 4 completely open spots. You don't have to be business affiliated, any sort of personality, nothing like that. If you just want to play some fantasy football with 63 other competitors, first I'm going to warn you, there are some serious competition that's coming into this league. So it's not nothing. So be ready for it. But we have some spots open if you're interested. Just reach me on any of the socials. Cory Bassett on Facebook, LinkedIn. I think it's Cory Bassett NC on Twitter, all that stuff. Or just email fantasyturfwar.com or at gmail.com. You could find me there. It's not hard to reach me. But Matt, where can they find you?
Matthew_Ahne, AHNE is how you spell the last name because I have a very difficult last name. On the X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. You can find me at Locked On Fantasy Baseball, wherever you may podcast, or on YouTube, or on Instagram. It's under Locked On Fantasy Baseball. But yeah, guys have any questions on or need help with your leagues, DM me on there. I'll definitely help you out.
Yeah, sounds good. And we don't want to let the episode go without addressing what happened over the weekend. Obviously, it's a very crazy time in our world, and it now more than ever, I think it's important for us to remember that we are capital A Americans first, and that we are more common. We have more in common than we don't, and it's time to focus on that and come together. And my sign off every week is more true this week than probably ever. And so, be excellent, be kind, and know that you're loved and appreciated. And on that note, we will see you next week. All righty. Peace out. See you.
Peace.